After a 101-95 loss to the super disappointing Lakers, the Utah Jazz have fallen to the 4th seed in the Western Conference. They aren't having a bad season by any means, far from it in fact. They're only 3 games behind the 2nd seed and still have a comfortable advantage over the 5th seed. They're going to continue being good in this regular season. That isn't really in question. For that matter, even the Lakers' loss wasn't nearly as bad because Donovan Mitchell had a concussion in the second half and is in concussion protocols right now, explaining his poor performance in this game. But there were many things which happened in this game which the Jazz should be very worried about, and this is the same issue which has been bothering this team forever at this point, especially in the playoffs, which has gotten them a really bad reputation. Today, I want to talk about this, and this exactly, so let's get into it.
They be like, what? Can you teach me how to dirty? You know why? Cause all the bitches love it. All I need is a beat that's super bumpin'. And for you to back it up and dump it.
Leave a like on this video and subscribe if you haven't already. I drop regular NBA content, and with the NBA season going on, this should interest you, so do subscribe to the channel. Let's start off by talking about something positive, because I really like a lot of things what the Jazz are doing this year. Firstly, their offense has been historically good, and it's legit one of the most beautiful things to watch in the league right now. Their offense, in my opinion, is as close to perfect as an offensive team can get. They get the best look possible every single possession, and though some might say they're way too reliant on the 3-point shot, the open looks they generate alongside their offensive personnel makes their offense looks ridiculously good. Rudy Gobert is the best pick and roll big man in the league, who generates by far the most open looks as a pick and roll big man, averaging 6.7 screen assists per game. Both Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell are two of the best pick and roll ball handlers in the league, who both provide two very different but just as effective dynamics to this team. Donovan Mitchell has arguably been the best pick and roll ball handler this year. He generates a point every single time he runs a pick and roll and takes advantage of Rudy Gobert's gravity as a big man to the fullest extent, averaging 1.05 points per possession as a pick and roll ball handler, which is the highest in the league out of anyone who runs a decent amount of pick and rolls. His pull-up shooting and scoring off the pick and roll has been nothing short of elite, as he's shooting 47% on almost 10 field goal attempts as a pick and roll ball handler. Though Donovan Mitchell is a brilliant passer, his scoring of the pick and roll is his primary ability, whereas Mike Conley is more of a passer. Conley is an elite spot-up shooter who can do a great job of complementing the Mitchell-Gobert pick and roll, and Conley finds the open shooter more often than not, and does a brilliant job as a ball handler in his own right. This pick and roll is basically the centerpiece of this brilliant Utah offense. It gets them an open look more often than not, and even if it doesn't, they do a great job of rotating the ball and getting the ball to an open man, which gets them the best look possible every single possession. This is actually a much more simplified version of the offense they ran last year, and it has worked wonders for them. Donovan Mitchell has taken a leap into superstardom. He has consistently been one of the 5 to 10 best offensive players in all of basketball. He's been ridiculously consistent when healthy and has taken another leap as a finisher and a playmaker. At this point, he's an elite pull-up shooter, an elite finisher, and an elite playmaker, which puts him in a class of very few. He's been great in every department of offense this year, and as we know, he's one of the best playoff risers in the league, so he should only get better as time progresses. And Mike Conley has been brilliant himself, and overall, the Jazz haven't really been a negative or a disappointing team in any regards. But they have many issues as a team still, which they haven't acknowledged at all, and these were exploited by the Lakers last game. The Lakers went small ball in the clutch, and it absolutely killed the Jazz. I see everyone trying to pinpoint the blame on Rudy Gobert when I just don't think this is true or has any credibility to it whatsoever. The biggest issue with the Utah Jazz in the playoffs when opponents go small is their absolutely horrendous point of attack defense. When teams go 5 out and play 5 shooters, it forces Gobert to play outside the paint to guard his man. And literally everyone else on the Jazz are absolutely horrendous on defense, and that's being generous to them. Like, they're so horseshit, it's actually sad. But in the regular season, Rudy Gobert carries an insane defensive load and puts them in respectable to elite category as a regular season defensive team. In the 4 games Rudy Gobert has missed this year, the Jazz defense fell from top 5 to the 11th place they stand in right now. Rudy Gobert covers for every single mistake the terrible perimeter defenders on the Jazz make right now, night in and night out. He's brilliant at helping and guarding his man at the same time when teams run traditional big man lineups. But when teams run 5-out offenses, the problem arises that he can't help the man in the paint as much because it will lead to an open shot in the corner. For example, Terrence Mann in the playoffs. And it also doesn't help that the Jazz perimeter defenders are absolutely terrible at rotating on defense because the Jazz perimeter defense is just that bad. This is what happened last game versus the Lakers. Jordan Clarkson let Stanley Johnson go right past him like 8 straight times, and every time Gobert came to help, there was someone open. People have this idea that Royce O'Neal is a good defender. He really isn't. He's the best perimeter defender on this Jazz team, but that really isn't a high bar. He's an average defender at best, who's carried by Gobert just like everyone else on this team. Just imagine this team with a guy like Matisse Thybulle, Jrue Holiday, Ben Simmons, Lou Dort, or literally any competent defender. Gobert, being the generational defender he is, makes the Jazz a great defensive team. I know I sound very pissed, it's because I am. This is the same issue the Jazz have been facing for the past 4 years, and they haven't done shit to fix it. The defenders who were at least passable at one point, like Mike Conley and Joe Ingles, have fallen off a massive cliff and are only making this Gobert's job harder. It pisses me off that people give Rudy Gobert so much shit, when in reality, this Jazz team is the one failing him, not the other way around. There was a quote from him recently which sums up mine and probably Rudy Gobert's frustration. He said, and I quote, "I watch some of the other teams like the Suns or Warriors. Those guys are a step ahead of us in terms of winning habits. Devin Booker is playing his ass off defensively. Guys like that, they buy in and you can tell they take pride in playing defense." Gobert never referred to any particular player on the Jazz in this quote because this is directed to every single one of them in the team. It also doesn't help that the Jazz don't let Rudy Gobert take advantage of the smaller defender on offense. This was an issue with him in previous years, where he wasn't really a good post player. Honestly, he still isn't, but he has learned how to position himself perfectly to make a shot in him. But the Jazz just don't seem to want to pass the ball to him. The number of plays this happened last game is actually depressing. The biggest problem with this is that the Jazz are stuck in this situation. They're trying out Rudy Gay at center lineup so that they can counter other teams' small ball lineups. But I don't think that's going to help whatsoever. Rudy Gobert is not the problem. Offenses are going to blow by everyone else like it's nothing, and not having Gobert in the paint to cover their sorry asses isn't going to help. The only way they can solve this issue is by getting another competent NBA defender. But the issue with that is that they have no assets at all. Jordan Clarkson is just a negative NBA player at this point and he has no value in the market. Joe Ingles is barely able to run both sides of the court. Players you get back by trading away guys like Bogdanovic and Royce O'Neal aren't moving the needle at all, so you're stuck. The only way this can improve is internal development. Mike Conley was a competent point of attack defender in Memphis. Donovan Mitchell has a ridiculously long wingspan. And though it might be a lot to ask of him after the offensive load he carries, he has the tools to be a competent defender. The defensive rotations being missed is something which should be done by better coaching. Players need to buy in, they need to show effort. Defense is all about effort and it's something the Jazz just don't give. And it's something Rudy Gobert has insisted on time and time again. It actually sucks because I personally thought this was the year for the Jazz team. I thought the playoff disappointments time and time again would force them to give effort on that end, and this absolutely beautiful offense they run would take them over the finish line. But now, I'm selling almost all my stock in this team unless they make a trade somehow. Though I was one of the people who was higher on them coming into the season, even after all the disappointments they had in the past. With that, we've come to the end of the video. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already.